Border Security investigative reporter for TV, radio, print media, and Kimberly has covered the news with an outside the Beltway perspective. Her experience as an investigative journalist ranges from national security issues like Gitmo's Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 9/11 trial, immigration, and foreign policy issues. She is the TV correspondent, CW News 6 San Diego, as well as One American News Network, and her award-winning website, thekdreport.com, and she streams live at Periscope and streaming live at Facebook and later on at YouTube. Hello, Kimberly. How are you doing?
How's it going?
Pretty good. Sound a little far off today, but that's quite all right.
Technology. You love it, but you love to hate it.
I was looking at your, Facebook said catch me streaming live. I haven't got it yet again for some reason.
I'm seeing all kinds of people on the thing here. I've got all kinds of followers. They're listening in to us here.
Okay, I'll mess around with it. But anyway, she says we're going to focus on Judge Kavanaugh and the EMP threat. Would that be extremely mean politicians, EMP?
I didn't think about it that way, but that should be the new acronym for what's going on with the SCOTUS confirmation process. That's a good one.
When I first saw about Maxine Waters, filing charges against her, that has all to do with a whole bunch of banks. I thought it was going to be, for making threats. I thought that was more serious, but boy, oh boy, and the Democrats have just, they've said it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's just not going to get confirmed. It doesn't matter who you have,
Yeah. Well, they've stalled on this process long enough. I think that what you're seeing in recent polling, that this is actually favoring the Republicans. It's something that's consensus building. And I really think that, in the days of, 93 votes to nominate someone to the Supreme Court, those days are gone because politics has really gotten in the way of this process. And it's sad because you look at this man and he's been just drugged through the gutter. And, every day here in Washington, D.C., we're seeing these, nope on Kavanaugh protests popping up all over. And when you talk to women on the streets, I talk to friends of mine, they are sickened by the entire process. And we all feel the same way. There are real women out there who are victims. And this process is mocking what's going on. And it's not going to make it any easier for women who are victims to come forward. And that is just absolutely ridiculous. And this comes at the hands of the Democrats who, released the name of the alleged, I guess, victim. And we don't know whether, she was attacked or who it was. But there's just a lot of evidence that's been reported by left-leaning organizations that are disproving her case on a daily basis. So I think that when you look at this, that it's going to be a sad day. The Kavanaugh will be a Supreme Court justice. He's going to get maybe 51, 52 votes, and the country will move on from this. And I think that he's going to be a little more liberal of a judge than I think most people are thinking as well. So,
do you get the feeling that when you listen to Chuck Schumer, and I'm getting this feeling like the last 4 or 5 times he spoke, it's almost like he's reading eulogy.
Yeah.
And this morning he's talking, this impeccable, believable testimony from Dr. Ford, and all, and it's like, well, why don't you mention, I want you to defend all of the lies she's been caught in. You're not a professor. Did you ever give anyone hypnotic classes, about how you could beat a polygraph? No, I did not. And it's already proven a lie. Yeah. But it's always, she's perfect, squeaky clean, yeah.
Well, and then, the whole idea of having a second front door is what prompted the memory to resurface for her. That's been completely thrown out the window. I mean, you had Politico doing an investigation on this, and they found that they did do some, home reconstruction, so to speak, but they added an office for a marriage counseling psychotherapist, and that's what they needed the front door for, the additional front door, which had no connection to the inside the house where she was presumably living. So she didn't even have a second front door for her to escape. As she told the committee, when she testified last week. So I just think when you look at all of the facts, and it's very sad that they put her through this. I feel as a female that, that she was duped into doing something like this. I think the Democrats used her, but it's very sad.
Kimberly, that break came upon us here, and we're going to be right back more. But the one and only Kimberly Dvorak, and her website, by the way, is thekdreport.com, thekdreport.com, and she's streaming live at Facebook. CRN Wilder with Kimberly Dvorak. And once again, it's thekdreport.com. Boy, I'll tell you, Kimberly, it's, you know how you used to see this where the little kids would put their hands on their ears and they didn't want to hear it,
Yeah.
And that seems to be the whole attitude of, I'd say 90% of the protesters and the Democrats, they just don't want to hear it. They don't want to look at anything. You give them facts like, why does she have all these close connections to the CIA, to the Planned Parenthood?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, right now, during the break, I was looking at the protest that's in front of the Supreme Court. A couple hundred protesters out there, several celebrities, I guess, or used to be celebrities. I actually retweeted the event that's taking place there, saying basically that, Justice Kavanaugh will ascend to the Supreme Court, and democracy is messy and loud, but in the end, justice will prevail. And I think that's what we're looking at now. And, the Democrats have to be looking at the female vote in the latest polling. And a lot of females really, whether they're independents, Republican, or Democrats, they think what's going on is terrible. So this has actually turned out to be another situation where I believe the Democrats overplayed their hand. They could have made their point and let it go and then move on to the next fight because they know they don't have the votes to block it. But, we all have to remember that the reason that 50 votes are, allowed +1 in the Senate is because Harry Reid went nuclear during his tenure in the Senate. So this is actually, you don't want to say turnabout fair play or this was coming back to haunt them, but this is coming back to haunt them.
And I think also that some of these Democratic critters do you think they're so naive they don't think women voters have sons?
No.
A very important thing. Like, it dawns on them, right? This could happen to my son. This could happen to anyone's son, And this thing about you're guilty until you can prove you're innocent, that's not the American way. That's not the judicial way.
Yeah, and all of the language on the mainstream media that men are irrelevant and we need to be giving all the jobs to women, and Jerry Brown passing his law this week or last week in Sacramento that every corporation is going to have a female on the board of that corporation. Which in fairness, I think we do need more women in boards of corporations as long as they're qualified for it. But when you put parameters like that on corporations, what's that going to do to them? They're actually most likely going to pick up and they'll do a DBA and they'll do their business and they'll move their headquarters to Nevada, Arizona, Texas, where they won't have a huge tax liability, and it's going to actually take jobs with it. So I think that while it may have been a good intention thing, and I think at the second half of the year, it's definitely been the year of the woman, and you've seen the Democrats play that card. But you're right that women are mothers, they're wives, they're daughters, and and it's only a matter of time until women start facing the same situations as men in this type of environment.
Now, I guess the people that should really start running from these experts, like especially the you, is the ones that should be shaking in their boots are the old white men. Could you imagine if any white person started using the opposite skin color and saying things like that? But my goodness, Whoopi gets away with it, and that lady. I guess she's a lady next to her. I haven't made up my mind about her yet. But,
and I think that if the Democrats don't get a blue wave like they're anticipating, and I don't think they're going to get a blue wave, then I think they're going to have to kind of rethink their politics in this, because this will come back to haunt them. And as President Trump continues to make his rounds on the campaign trail in very important key states, I mean, the numbers are turning for the people that he's campaigning on behalf of, and the president needs this. And I think that, the Democrats and the media as well, they still haven't got it. We talked about this during the 2016 campaign. Nobody gets Trump and why people like him, and that he makes a comment that, at the rally last week about, Kavanaugh, she doesn't remember, and everybody comes out against the president on that in the mainstream media. People at the rally and people across the country are going, she doesn't remember. Why can't he say that? So I just think that this is going to be another election cycle where I think the Democrats are going to be upended here. They've overplayed their hand. And I think that they'll be ready to fight fire with fire by the time we get to 2020, because you can't really continue to go down any further than they are. They have relatively little power in Washington, D.C.
And Kellyanne, defended the president because they're going, Sarah Sanders, about, they said, oh, look at him, he's mocking her like a little baby. He wasn't, and actually, a lot of people say, all of her answers sound like maybe she was a fifth grader, the way she talked, but maybe that's just the way she is. But whenever, he said, what he said, it was the truth. And he wasn't making fun of her. He was actually quoting exactly word for word what she said. But let me tell you something. Talking about the women waking up and Americans waking up, there was a new poll, Kelly, that I gave out today, and surprised me. This is from NPR, PBS, and it indicates the Republicans are now closing the Democrats' wide gap in voter enthusiasm. And it says, thanks to the ongoing crisis surrounding the confirmation of Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see. I mean, at the Supreme Court, we're watching the protests unfold. But it's people who are middle class or trying to become in the middle class. They're working hard. A lot of them are working 2 jobs. They're not flipping on the TV to see this, and they're only getting bits and drabs of what is going on up here. And in the end, they're looking at going, "Are you serious?" A soundbite with Ms. Ford. I mean, you're right. To me, she was like she was a child that was talking about this for an incredibly long time. For someone who's supposed to have a PhD in this country, I mean, you would think she'd be a little more authoritative and know how to contact her senator. If she could contact her congresswoman, then she could contact her senator. But she couldn't do something like that. So I just think that people look at it and they're like, that's just so unbelievable. It's just ridiculous. In the age of the internet, you pop in what you want in Google and it finds it for you. So I just think, again, they've overplayed their hand here. And people, when you talk to them out of the political spotlight and you're asking and you're talking about the real, meat and potato issues, the American people, they just want to pay their mortgage, get their kids to soccer games, and, try to save enough money for them to go to college someday. And they're not looking at the minutiae of this. And when they see that, they're seeing President Trump check off list. Check. Okay, we got this campaign. We got our Supreme Court justice too. Check. So he's going around and checking off all of these lists. And I think now with the latest news we're hearing about China, which I think we can talk about when we start talking about the EMP, because I think that China is a real threat for that as well. But the president is out there, making trade deals with other countries, and China, we learned today, has actually made Russia look like small potatoes when it comes to election tampering.
And the other thing too is that they call her a psychologist. Come to find out, she was lying about that. But and we'll go to the EMP. But I'm going to ask you: did you happen to see Graham today? And when he says, my God, because he was walking away and then they kept hollering at him, he turned around. He said, "You're so worried about him, put him in water and see if he floats."
Yeah, I
said, that is.
And that's the environment that these protesters are bringing to Capitol Hill. And again, it's only a matter of time until we see another, some sort of attack against, politicians. I mean, we have Democrats toxing and throwing out addresses of Lindsey Graham and other senators so protesters can go to their house and protest. It becomes very unsafe in these types of environments. And after people lose and have loss after loss after loss, then they will strive and do things they wouldn't necessarily do if they were, winning one, losing two, winning one, and having some wins in there. But with President Trump winning all the time on all of these issues, they're becoming those rats that are backed into the corner, and they're going to start lashing out. We're seeing that unfold here, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C.
The old saying, what would you do if the shoe was on the other foot?
Yeah.
It may come around to haunt you at this time. Let's move into this EMP attack. Excellent report from Kimberly Dvorak, and this is actually part two because last week we were talking about it. But in this one, you talk about another thing Trump has done with his leadership to Congress. They've added the so-called new and improved EMP commission. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Well, the pros and cons of that, I think you'll find people who are scientists who've been following the EMP and been on the EMP commission for a decade or more are a little thrown off by this. But with the Trump re-engaged EMP commission, the fact that he's put a time limit on this of a year and said, look, within a year I want a report and I want a classified one and then release a declassified one for the general public and the media to get the information out there, and then we're going to actually start following through with the recommendations of the commission. Whereas before, the commission made all of these recommendations, this is what we should do, this is how we should go about it, and nothing was ever done about it. It's just like, oh, here's another report, and we don't do anything. So I think when you see the president, he's again taking action, saying, okay, look, it's going to be a year, we're fully funding this, and then when we get the results, you're coming back, you're reporting to the Senate Armed Services Committee, and we're going to get the information out, and we're going to follow through and actually protect the homeland. And again, this goes back to the China issue that we were talking about a few moments ago.
Well, in fact, mentioning China, because the EMP Commission director said the nuclear EMP is the ultimate cyber weapon in its military doctrines and plans of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. It kind of surprised me that they're still throwing in North Korea, but you never know. And he continued, protecting the grid from the worst threats. Yeah. Nuclear EMP attack can mitigate lesser threats, including the natural EMP from solar storms. Yeah. And people don't want to talk about solar storms. No, we don't want to talk about that. And, it's worse than global warming, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually happened before in this country. So we have seen evidence of this. Scientists have actually done all of their homework on this, and it can happen. But the most likely attack coming at the country and our nation's power grid would most likely come from either China or Iran. Those are the two leading countries. And I think that you have to kind of look at the fact that, again, President Trump's been pretty brutal on China, going back and forth with these, trade tariffs. China, is a large country growing, and they like, kind of getting their way in everything. And now they ran into Trump, and they're trying to figure out a way to get him out of office because they don't like the fact that there's going to be more free and fair trade between China and the United States. And so, I mean, I guess that's, a kudos to President Trump for doing a good job on that front. But you have to be worried about what China would be willing to do to make sure that President Trump is not around in 2020, or maybe they're just, threatened by the United States altogether and could covertly launch some sort of EMP attack against the United States. And then it's game over for the US. We're not even in this scenario anymore. Now the world will be ruled by China. Russia would probably come in and help out a little bit. That would be really the scenario that the Chinese look at.
Another interesting thing is this Henry Cooper EMP Commission. If I find it here, he explained that the EMP Commission is profoundly concerned that the 2014 Obama administration intelligence community assessment of the nuclear EMP, and here's his words, he claimed the previous administration's plan was the worst ever produced on EMP.
Yeah, it was do nothing. I mean, that's typical for the Obama administration. They would say all the pretty words, president would come out and he does a really good reading of the teleprompter, but there were no actions involved. And that's why our economy kind of sputtered. That's why we didn't really grow in the last 8 years, and why we have President Trump as president right now. But I think that, when you look at this and you look at the commissioners, I mean, right now their beef with the Trump administration is that he put this in the hands of the Defense Department, where it may be a better fit for Department of Homeland Security to take the lead on this, or quite possibly even the Energy Department may take the lead on this, because they would be able to focus just on this one particular issue. Whereas in the military, they're looking at, making sure that they have enough osprey and they're getting as many recruits as they need, so we can have a, cohesive, military, throughout the country and throughout the world, and that we're protecting the homeland the best we can. So I think that the commission, I would think, would be pleasantly surprised to see that we're probably going to see some action on this. In fact, the report should be coming out this month, so we should get a little bit of a taste for what we're going to start doing to harden our, power grid, so we can ensure that we're not victims of this.
The key word, 2 words, electric grid, and that's what they're looking at. And last week when you were on with me, we were talking about is it Faraday cages?
Yeah.
That's what it's called?
Yeah, they're boxes. They're actually boxes that would protect, like your computers, would protect your phones, your radios, batteries, things like that you could actually put out there and survive an EMP. Yeah.
I bet their stock is going up, Kimberly. So
I bet too.
We're going to be right back. More from the one and only Kimberly Dvorak. She's our award-winning national security, border security investigative reporter, TV, radio, print media. Remember the website, it's thekdreport.com, and she's a correspondent, CW6 News San Diego, One American News Network, and we'll be back with more from the Lady in Red in just a moment. CRN Digital Talk, Chuck Wilder here with my guest, Kimberly Dvorak, and it is thekdreport.com, and she streams live, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. She's everywhere. It's interesting in this report where you say many critics say U.S. leaders have their heads so far up in the sand, and we are preoccupied debating issues that while the EMP threats are obviously critical, it won't matter a whit if the United States gets nuked with an EMP attack.
That's a very, I think I wrote a pretty critical piece on this second EMP story. I think it's critical because I think that people need to wake up to the fact that, there could even, I think last week we talked about how, some people within, inside the United States could presumably, launch some sort of attack just to, kind of ensure that they're protected, 20 years down the line. It's a very sad thing and a very sad commentary for this country if that's, some people are thinking about that. But I really think that, this is something where it wouldn't be like nuclear Armageddon where, everything would be completely, there'd be no trees, there'd be nothing left, no life. This is something where they would just wipe out our infrastructure in essence. And it's going to end up killing a lot of Americans because we rely on medicine and electricity for hospitals and things like that. And it's much easier of an attack to implement. And we've seen these underground tunnels across the southern border. And so this is something, the threat is very real. Now, I've talked to people inside the Defense Department, and they've said, look, we're taking this seriously. We're going about it. We're going to follow through when the report is, put on our desk, presumably this month sometime. And then we're going to see some action. Some states are already taking action, like Texas is taking their own action on this to prevent that. But in the end, it's a very serious topic. And I felt when I was putting this series together that, it needed to be directed as harshly as possible so people would wake up to the fact that, look, these Middle East wars, we really don't have any business over there. We don't really do a lot of trade with those countries. And that's really a region of the world where Europe have at it, Russia have at it. we don't really need to mess around there. We ought to be focused much more on our national security, and EMP threats are a real threat to this country.
Yeah, and you don't get to go to your telephone or your TV or your radio or your computer or to Facebook and say, what in the heck's going on? Everything seems to beat down. Blah, blah, blah. And I think the way to really get their attention, Kimberly, is just remember, if the EMP attack comes, there's not going to be any NFL football, basketball, or even This Is Us on television.
Hockey,
right?
it was like in town this last night, so.
I'm sorry?
I said hockey, the national champion hockey team was in town last night playing, so it was pretty crazy out there.
How many of the players did you say hello to? Huh?
All of them.
All right. Hey, so a reminder that next week we're going to be on Wednesday, and I think you're back in San Diego, right?
I will be on Sunday, and I'm giving a speech in San Diego, which I will post as soon as I get it uploaded. And it's going to be focusing on the elections and paper ballots, which we've discussed here in depth on Wilder Radio. That's on Monday.
All right. Fantastic. So Kimberly Dvorak, and remember, listeners, go to her website.